Welcome to The Explainer. Now, this deep dive comes as a special request from Sachin Karnik, founder and CEO of Energy and Personal Excellence, for their Philosophical Exploration ARM program. Today, we are tackling one of the giants of thought, Immanuel Kant. This is a philosopher who didn't just contribute to the conversation, he completely changed the rules of the game for all of Western philosophy.
So, where are we going today? Well, first, we've got to understand the philosophical dead end that everyone was stuck in. Then we'll see the skeptical challenge that literally woke Kant up. From there, we'll dive into his radical solution, what he called his Copernican revolution. We'll map out the mind's architecture according to him, see how he applied it to everything, and finally, look at the powerful legacy we're still wrestling with today.
All right, to really get Kant, you have to picture the world he was walking into. It wasn't a blank slate. Philosophy was stuck in this massive tug of war, a real impasse between two completely opposite schools of thought. So on one side of the ring, you had the rationalists. Think René Descartes. Their whole deal was that you could figure out the deepest truths of the universe just by sitting in your armchair and thinking really, really hard. Pure reason was king. But on the other side, you had the empiricists, like David Hume, who came back and said, not so fast. They argued that all real knowledge, everything we actually know, has to come through our senses. If you can't see it, hear it, or touch it, it's not real knowledge. It was a total stalemate. And then along comes David Hume. He wasn't just another voice in the debate. He basically lobbed a philosophical grenade into the middle of the room. He posed a challenge so deep, so skeptical, that it threatened to make the entire study of metaphysics, the study of reality itself, completely impossible.
Hume's attack was just brilliant in its simplicity. He said, okay, let's talk about cause and effect. Think about one billiard ball hitting another. You see the first ball roll, you see it make contact, and then you see the second ball move. You see it 1,000 times. But Hume pointed out, you never ever actually see the cause. You don't see the necessary connection, that invisible force that makes the second thing happen. All you see is one event following another. For Hume, this was a bombshell. It meant cause and effect wasn't a law of the universe, but maybe just a habit of our minds.
And this was the argument that hit Kant like a lightning bolt. He famously said it was what woke him from his dogmatic slumber. See, if Hume was right, then all of science, which is totally built on the idea of cause and effect, was suddenly standing on quicksand. Kant knew he had to respond. He had to find an answer, or philosophy was in big trouble. And Kant's answer wasn't just a small correction. It was radical. He proposed what he called a Copernican revolution in philosophy. You know, just like Copernicus changed everything by saying the Earth revolves around the sun, not the other way around, Kant was about to do the exact same thing to our understanding of knowledge. For centuries, the basic assumption was simple. There's a world out there, and our minds are like passive mirrors, just trying to get a clear reflection of it. Kant completely flipped that. He said, you've got it backwards. Our minds aren't passive mirrors. They're active projectors. Our mind actively structures and organizes the world we experience. Objects don't just imprint themselves on our minds. Our minds actually shape how we perceive objects in the first place. Think of it this way. Your mind has a kind of built-in operating system, a set of lenses you're born with. The raw data that comes in from your senses, all the light, sound, and textures, is just a chaotic mess. It's just noise. It only becomes an orderly, understandable world after it passes through these organizing structures in your mind. We don't just receive reality, we actively construct our experience of it. Now, to explain exactly how this construction project works, Kant had to become an architect of the mind. He created a whole new set of blueprints and vocabulary, and his entire project was built around answering one very specific, very technical-sounding but absolutely crucial question. I know, that sounds super intimidating, synthetic a priori propositions. But stick with me, because if you get this, you get Kant. What he's really asking is this. How is it possible that we can know things about the world that are brand new information, that's the synthetic part, but that are also universally and necessarily true, that's the a priori part, without just learning them from experience? Think about the laws of math or physics. They tell us something new about the world, and they're always true. How? Okay, let's break down these building blocks. An analytic statement is basically a definition. A bachelor is an unmarried male. The second part just unpacks the first, no new info there. A synthetic statement, though, adds something new. It synthesizes new information. Then you have a posteriori, which is just knowledge you get after experience. You know the sky is blue because you've looked at it.
And a priori is knowledge you have before any experience, stuff that's just necessarily true, like 7 plus 5 equals 12. Kant's genius was to combine these and say the most important truths, like in science, are both synthetic and a priori. They get us new, powerful info about the world, but they're as certain as a math problem. And this concept, synthetic a priori truth, this was everything for Kant. It was his answer to Hume. Hume had basically said that any real knowledge about the world had to come from messy, uncertain experience. But Kant argued that foundational principles, like every event must have a cause, were synthetic a priori. They had to be certain, or the entire building of science would collapse. So this leads to one of Kant's most famous and, mind-bending ideas. If our minds are constantly structuring our reality, that means we have to make a huge distinction. There's the world as it appears to us. He called this the phenomena. This is the only world we ever experience, the one shaped by our mental software. But then, there's the world as it really is in itself, independent of our minds. He called this the noumena. And here's the kicker. We can never, ever get to it. This lands us at a really profound and humbling conclusion. Kant puts a hard border around human knowledge. We are forever stuck looking at the world through our human-colored glasses. We can know the thing for me, the reality our mind serves up, but we can never know the thing in itself, the raw, unfiltered reality. So, after building this revolutionary new foundation, Kant spent the rest of his life systematically applying it to every major area of human life and thought. He did this in 3 gigantic landmark books that we call the 3 Critiques. You can think of these 3 books as one epic project to map the entire human mind. The first one, The Critique of Pure Reason, is all about science and knowledge. It asks the big question, what can we actually know for certain? The second, The Critique of Practical Reason, pivots to ethics and morality. It asks, okay, so what should we do? What's the basis for right and wrong? And finally, The Critique of Judgment ties it all together by looking at beauty and purpose, asking, what can we ultimately hope for? It's knowledge, morality, and hope, the whole shebang. Now, that first critique, the most famous one, actually came to a pretty shocking conclusion for its time. Kant systematically argued that traditional metaphysics, the philosophers who claimed they had absolute, certain knowledge about things like God, free will, or the immortal soul, was basically a failure. And why? Because all of those big ideas exist in that noumenal realm, beyond the limits of our possible experience, and therefore forever beyond the limits of our knowledge. So, if Kant just spent a whole book tearing down the foundations of traditional metaphysics, what did he build up in its place? Well, this is where his whole grand project comes together, in this incredibly elegant solution to the great conflicts of his era, and frankly, of ours too. This quote, from the introduction to his first critique, is Kant's masterstroke. At first glance, it sounds like he's attacking knowledge, right? But he's actually doing the exact opposite. By doing away with, or maybe more accurately, by drawing a boundary around what we can claim to know with absolute certainty, he actually carves out a safe and protected space for other vital parts of being human. Here is his brilliant solution. He drew a line in the sand. On one side, he put science. He said science operates in the phenomenal world, the world of experience, and here it is king. This protected science from the claims of religious dogma. But on the other side of the line, he made room for faith. He argued that even though we can't know for certain that God exists or that we have free will, we have to believe in them as a foundation for living a moral life. It's a practical necessity. And by doing this, he gave both science and faith their own sovereign territory, where neither could step on the other's toes. As you can imagine, this work was so foundational that pretty much all of the philosophy that came after him was, in one way or another, a reaction to it. You had the German idealists like Hegel, who came right after him trying to fix what they saw as problems. Then, later in the 1800s, you had a back-to-Kant movement. His ideas have just been debated, reinterpreted, and challenged ever since. And of course, his system has always had its critics. A lot of people have pushed back, saying his ethical rules are just too abstract and rigid for the real, messy world. Others worry that if we're always shaping our own reality, maybe we're just trapped inside our own heads, with no connection to the real world at all. And a lot of later philosophers felt he put way too much emphasis on justifying science, and in doing so, maybe he ignored some of the deeper, more existential questions of life. But no matter the critiques, Kant's Copernican revolution is still the great dividing line in modern thought. By shifting philosophy's focus from the object to the subject, from the world out there to the mind in here, he framed the questions we are all still grappling with.
He leaves us with this ultimate lingering puzzle. How much of the world that you see is truly what's out there, and how much of it is a reflection of you? For more information, feel free to contact Sachin J. Karnik at the email you see on the screen.